Imagine how it would feel if you were completely fluent in another language. But if you're like me, you might have struggled to learn a language in the past. Maybe you got nowhere in classes at school, or despite downloading various apps, you still can't understand people when they speak to you. I used to be in exactly the same position, but after years of trial and error, I realised that anyone can learn a language without needing to move abroad. And through my experience of learning Spanish and Mandarin to different levels, I've picked up what I think are some of the fundamental truths that we need to focus on. So in this video, I'm going to share 8 simple changes which finally turn me into a successful language learner, and they could do the same for you. Before we get started though, right up front, I want to make it clear that I'm going to cover the things that I think most people overlook when it comes to first learning a new language. As soon as you type in anything to do with learning a language online, you are bombarded with companies and apps and methods and now AI. But if you've struggled to learn a language in the past, just Googling best apps to learn a language might not solve the issues that you could have. So we're going to delve deeper today. Rather than just look at the resources you could quite easily Google, we're going to build the foundations that will turn you into a successful language learner. Oh, and if you're just getting started with learning a new language, that's what we talk about around here. So if that sounds your sort of thing, then consider hitting the subscribe button down below. I've also created a document summarizing this video. So if you think that would be helpful, that will also be linked down in the description if you want to download it. Now that's out of the way, let's look at the first problem. Imagine a builder going to make a large building of some sort by starting to pile bricks on top of one another, with no real idea what the building is supposed to look like, or even what it's for, versus an architect who has a clear idea of who the structure is being built for and why it's being built. They drew up clear plans before anyone even touches a brick. So it sort of makes sense before you rush off and download a gazillion apps to think about what you want from the language you're trying to learn. You probably don't need to get to a point where you're writing academic papers, and so what you want to do in the future might affect the activities that you should be doing right now. Not only that, but having a strong image in your mind of the sorts of experiences you want to have can be a really powerful motivator. Maybe you're backpacking across a country where the language is spoken, having life-changing experiences through the conversations you're having. Maybe it's to open up opportunities at work, or even just connect with family or even make friends. Having a strong long-term vision for goals in the language will massively help you over the course of time, and it keeps you going on the days when perhaps you don't have quite so much energy. So I think it was Bill Gates who said something along the lines of, most people overestimate what you can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Now, I'm not suggesting these are the timescales that we're talking about in language learning, but certainly people can get frustrated and give up sooner than they should. You definitely shouldn't expect to still be a beginner after years and years with the language, but a long-term view can help you adjust your expectations so that you know that it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And honestly, if you put into practice the tips from this video, you won't be a beginner forever, I promise you. Also, just to help with managing your expectations around learning a language, the better you get at a language, the easier it is. So first of all, you're limited to the sorts of things you can do and understand and even enjoy in the language. Before too long, that will completely change. Once you get to a certain point, it's just part of your daily life as you enjoy content creators, music, all related to the language that you're learning. Just remember, it's hardest at the beginning, so keep that in mind and it will help you stay consistent. Now, I want to briefly explain something. Presumably, you don't feel like you're yet at an advanced level in the language you're learning at the moment. That is cool. That is part of the process of learning a new language. So largely, the language is out there in the real world. It's not all in your head yet. I always notice when I meet people in the real world that tell me that they're learning a language, but from the description of what they're doing, they're not getting a lot of exposure to the language they're learning. They might be learning about the language, and that can have its place, But it's going to be really hard to get enough of the language into your head and build the structures that you need without a lot of exposure. It is amazing what the brain can do naturally. So that could be immersion, mass sentences and input approach, language islands. You're an adult, just see what takes your pick. The point is that when you're having a conversation, it is a two-way thing. You need to be able to understand a lot, otherwise you're just talking at someone like a human foghorn. So focus on building your understanding through a lot of exposure to the language, like easier podcasts for learners or books or videos. Regardless of other methods you use, this is a key part of the puzzle that you cannot miss out on. Now, if you're a lifelong learner like me, then I'm sure learning cool stuff interests you. Genuinely, doing online courses has completely changed my life. And so at Skillshare, they have a ton of curated courses by experts sharing their knowledge. Skillshare is a massive online platform with thousands of courses on pretty much everything. So yes, you can find language learning courses on there too. There are plenty of courses for a ton of languages, including Spanish, French, Mandarin, Korean, Japanese, and to be honest, loads more. And once you get better at a language, you can do courses in that language, like I did when I was learning about photography recently in Spanish. But more than that, they've got a load of different courses on so many other subjects, from productivity, finance, self-help, and more. Basically, if you want to level up your life in any way, they probably have a course on it. The first 500 people to join Skillshare using my link get 1 month premium free, so check out the link in the description. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. So, you know that feeling when you're watching a movie and not everything makes sense right away, but you stick with it because you trust the story will come together, and in the end, all of those twists and turns are going to make sense. Learning a language is a little bit like that. So you won't catch every word or understand every grammar rule immediately, and that is perfectly normal. Instead of getting hung up on all the small parts that don't click right away, it's better to just enjoy the process and trust that understanding will come over time. A little mystery can actually make the learning journey less stressful, as you aren't obsessed with minor details right now. It can take some getting used to if you're newer, but you have to learn to accept that you won't always understand everything. You will make more progress than you thought. You can't learn a language without accepting a bit of ambiguity. Just keep going, and what used to seem fuzzy will start to become clearer as you improve. You know how sometimes you're in the zone, you're fully focused on the task, and at other times you just want to relax and take it easy. Well, when we're learning a language, we can use that to our advantage. So in those times when you have more energy, pushing yourself by using more challenging material can be incredibly productive. And this is what most people think of when it comes to learning a language. Those moments sitting down and deliberately doing something. And I've started doing what's called intensive reading to try and push myself a little bit more. And it's genuinely really interesting reading online articles about interesting things with my morning coffee. So that deliberate approach is one option. But I don't want you to sleep on how powerful it can be to take a lower energy approach. There is a huge amount of value in less active activities, like just listening to simple podcasts in the language, perhaps when you're doing some chores, or listening or reading something you've already seen. It's like rewatching your favorite movie. You might catch some new details that you missed the first time round, and it reinforces what you already know. Both high energy and low energy approaches have their place, and over time, even the more relaxed activities make a huge difference. Because they take less energy, you can do a lot more of them over the course of the day. It's all about finding a balance that suits your personality and keeps the learning process enjoyable. My old job was really stressful and involved, and so a more laid-back approach with lots of easy listening meant I still made progress, and now I can speak Spanish. Had I not spent so much time doing easy stuff, there is no way I would be where I am now. It needs to fit with your lifestyle, and you can change your approach over time, but find a balance that works for you. Now, this is something that I talk about all of the time, and I know not everybody who's watching this is a new viewer, so I'm going to keep this one brief. Just to be clear, this is a thing that will make or break your language learning. I've got a load more videos about it if it interests you. The biggest epiphany I had when I was struggling to learn Chinese and then started to see the light was this. You have to do something with the language you're learning every day. Look, I'm not going to tell you off if you miss a day, but one day off does not mean you've fallen off the wagon. If learning a language is genuinely a priority, make time for it. Start small, you don't have to be a hero. Increase what you're doing over time, and that one simple change could be all you need to start seeing the progress that you want. There won't be one huge jump from not fluent to fluent. It's a process through lots of small steps taken every day over time. Before worrying about the best method or app, make sure that you've got a solid daily habit doing whatever appeals to you right now. So, you know how sometimes you can just figure out how a new gadget works without poring over the entire manual? You just start pushing buttons and before you know it, you're getting the hang of it. Language learning can be a bit like that. Many new learners get so wrapped up in studying grammar rules that they forget that language is about communication, not perfection. The funny thing is, you can understand and convey so much without nailing every grammatical detail. And often, you can work out stuff as you go along. By immersing yourself and picking up things naturally, you often learn faster and enjoy the process more. So don't obsess over learning every grammar rule. It might have its place, and I totally get that some people love it, but if you don't, I wouldn't worry. You can always go back and polish up some of the grammar at a later date if you really feel the urge. For some people, the biggest hurdle in learning a new language is not the vocabulary, it's not the grammar, despite what you might have heard. If you're understanding this video, you're already demonstrating your ability to pick up a language. You've successfully learned one language, so your brain totally has the capacity to learn another with enough exposure and practice. For a lot of people, it's their own self-doubt or negative thoughts that create obstacles. Just know that you can learn a language, and if you apply the tips that I'm showing here, I really believe you can make progress. And whilst we're here, on the internet, there are so many stories about these wonder kids who learned a language in half the time it took you to drive to work. But comparison is the thief of joy, so don't worry about them. You probably have a job or other commitments, which means you can't take the summer off and be a full-time language learner. That's normal. Their learning has nothing to do with what you're up to, so just focus on your goals and daily activities and you'll have a much more enjoyable time of it, I promise. If all the points I'm making here were like levels on Super Mario, this point would be the big boss at the end, because if you can overcome this one, you'll be set for life. Only one person is going to put the language you're learning into your head. Only you can do that. Take charge of your own learning and make decisions about the steps that you're going to take every day to get better at whatever language you want to learn. The compounding effect suggests that even small actions over time can make a difference. I would add that as you get used to what you're doing, it becomes easier to add more stuff down the line because you don't think about what you do every day. Whatever app you download to learn a language, it isn't in charge. If it's not giving you the results you want, you need to take responsibility and move on instead of blaming the app and just stopping altogether. You want to become your own boss and take charge of your learning, including finding what works for you. After all, you can't do everything. Right, so what I find is I think people are often really obsessed with finding the best method, especially if you think you've maybe not made the progress you wanted to in the past. The method is always to blame for a lot of people. People want things faster by nature. Humans are impatient, but honestly, I believe it's more about the human factors when it comes to learning a language rather than the method. If there are two people both using the best method and one person is super motivated compared to someone who finds the whole thing pretty boring, obviously the person bored out of their mind isn't going to make nearly the same progress as the person doing the things that I've shared with you in this video. And in fact, I want to suggest to you that if you're motivated with a strong long-term goal, solid daily habits, and the right mindset to approach your learning, then to be honest, the method is less important than you might think. Though I will add that the language isn't in your brain yet, so you do need to get a lot of exposure to it. Just reading one vocabulary list won't make you fluent in French. If this video has been helpful, I'd appreciate it if you give it a like down below. There's that download in the description as well if you want it for a summary. And if you want to start your journey to build a solid daily habit to get fluent, then watch this video next where I can show you what to do.